remember the first time that you knew that you were a boy or a girl? Do you remember how you felt when you realized that being a boy or a girl, it meant that you had to act or look a certain way? Well, I don't remember those moments, but what I do remember is that gender was really unfair because I, as a girl, had to wash the dishes for an hour straight every night while my brother, the boy, got to mow the lawn in 20 minutes flat on a Saturday once a week. I mean, really, which takes longer? Doing the dishes. Gender was really messing up my life in these moments. And I also remember that there were all these strange rules for being a girl or a boy. As a girl, I was supposed to want to be on the cheerleading team, want to shave my legs, and care a lot about my hair. And then boys, they were supposed to try to be on the football team, play video games all the time, and pay absolutely no attention to their hair. But the thing was, I remember not being interested in any of those things. And I remember there were a lot of other boys and girls who felt the same way. But like a lot of us in this room, as a kid, what I did want to do is I wanted to fit in. I wanted to belong, and I wanted to be included. So I just kind of went along with those gender stereotypes, even though they didn't quite fit. And I tried really hard to figure out what it meant to be a girl. But the feeling that there was something unfair about those boy and girl stereotypes, that stayed with me. But then something happened that completely changed my world when it came to gender. As in, it exploded and imploded everything I thought I knew about gender, all at the same time. You see, I was 14 years old, and I was in my hometown of New Orleans. I went with my two best girlfriends to this New Orleans music festival, and we stumbled upon this small side stage where this amazing band was playing. The lead singer, he was dressed head to toe in black leather, Doc Martens on his feet, punkish, spiky hair, and I've got to tell you, we were crushing hard on all the band members, especially the lead singer. His name was, wait for it, Lenny Zenith. I mean, even his name was crushable, right? As we were drowning in our first teenage crush right in front of the stage, acting crazy, two people walked up from the side of the stage who'd been watching our teenage antics, and they whispered in my ear, "You realize that Lenny Zenith, he's not a guy, right?" He was born a girl. In a literal moment, my first teenage crush was turned completely upside down, and my first crush would change my entire life, as in my life would never be the same. And no, I did not go on to marry Lenny Zenith, although don't tell my 14-year-old self that. No, I did not go on to identify as trans. But yes, I did start to wake up to the impact that gender has on all of our lives. And I started to notice some things that were right there in front of me, but I just hadn't seen. And this was profound because a lot of people don't know what being trans means, right? They may understand what being gay means, but being trans, it's different. It's about being assigned a sex at birth that just doesn't fit. And Lenny Zenith, as I was soon to notice, wasn't the only trans person in the world. They had been around for a long time, even though my history books hadn't breathed a word of their existence. And this was problematic because when I would go and visit my extended family in India, I would see trans people there all the time. They were called the Hijra. They would come to our homes on the mornings of weddings and the births of precious little babies. They would offer prayers for good fortune and prosperity. As they would sing those prayers and dance those blessings, you could literally feel it in your bones. And trans people have played important and similar roles, not just in India, but all around the globe. They've been in Africa and Asia, Latin America and Europe, the Pacific Islands, and even in this land we now call the United States. You see, the idea that there's been a gender other than just being a man or a woman, well, that's been a part of our historical record for a really long time. And like a lot of important parts of history, it's been deleted. And the problem with that deletion is that it leaves us with this impression that being trans is a recent thing. It's a trend. It's an in thing to do. It's a only thing that happens in white and Western communities. And that's just not true. You see, the problem with us thinking that being trans is a recent thing is that we stop noticing the gender impact on our own lives. I mean, if we can get really quiet for a moment and reflect on our own genders and the genders of people who we love, we can probably hear a whisper that says, yes, my gender, it's more than just my anatomy and biology. We might even hear a whisper that says, yeah, this two-gender system, it's limiting for everyone. And we might even hear a whisper that says, wow, if you are trans, that must be one of the most terrifying, frightening, scary, and even dangerous things you can do. But we don't hear these whispers because when we turn on the TV, trans people are there all the time. Maybe everything's good for this community. We had Chaz Bono on Dancing with the Stars a few years back, and we had Laverne Cox, first African-American trans woman to stand there proudly on the cover of Time magazine. And who can forget Caitlyn Jenner, who with all her white and class privilege came out in a television interview and shocked millions around the globe with the disclosure of her womanhood in an interview on television with Diane Sawyer. Trans people are speaking out for themselves, right? We hear their voices, and even if it's not us, there are other people speaking out for them, right? Well, let's test this idea that things are better for trans people today with a question and some words inspired by social justice advocate Jane Elliott. You ready for the question? If you, as a person in this room, if you would be happy to be treated in the same way that trans people are treated in today's society, stand. If you, as a person in this room, if you would be happy, more than happy, to receive that same treatment that trans people do, stand. I invite you to look around the room. Nobody is standing. And that tells us very plainly that we all know what is going on. We don't want that treatment for ourselves. But I want to ask us how we can allow or accept that treatment for others. Why aren't we all doing more, right? I mean, I think one of the reasons we're not doing more is because we don't know the stats that nearly 1 in 2 trans people attempt suicide at some point in their life. That's nearly half this room. Imagine that, what it means for what they must think the quality of their lives are in this world. And you know, I do this for a living. I could stand up here and talk to you about stats all day, but the thing about statistics, they don't touch our hearts. They don't shift us into action. Perhaps the personal stories of trans people would be more helpful in allowing us to do that. Like the story of a 15-year-old trans youth who, when I sat with him, he had just been kicked out of his house by his parents. He said, Anneliese, I don't know where to call home anymore. Or like the older trans woman who, when I sat with her, she said, I was assigned male at birth, identify as a woman. She was as in love with her wife today as she had been all those years ago. She was so scared to tell her wife she was trans. She was afraid her wife would leave. She said, Anneliese, how do I make an excruciating choice between losing the love of my life and losing my very self and identity? These stories, there's no way around it. They are heartbreaking. But these stories, they also drive home the point that it's time now more than ever to expand our view about gender, right? And to really allow people to be who they are and how they are. I researched the resilience that trans people have to discrimination, the way they resist gender stereotypes, and I've got to tell you, their resilience, it's mighty. The way they speak out for their rights, the way they learn to love themselves, not despite who they are, but because of who they are. And I think we can all be inspired by this resilience because we can all resist gender stereotypes more. Gender stereotypes, they affect us all, even though we think, and we want to think, I want to think, that I'm immune. Like the powerful woman in the boardroom who is criticized for being too assertive when she's just expressing good judgment and intelligence. Or like the boy or man who is judged or teased when he dares to express emotion or cry. You see, we can all resist gender stereotypes more by teaching people in our world that your gender for you, my gender for me, their gender for them, that's not up to anyone else to say or decide. And we can start to really think about there may not be one universal way to be any gender. Now, I do want to be clear, I don't think trans people want us to come and save them. But what I do think trans people want is for us to come and stand beside them. I'm reminded of a quote by Lila Watson. She said, "If you have come to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation, it's bound up with mine, then let us work together. Let us work together." And we can work together by using our voices to speak up and out about everyday situations around gender. We can teach our children to love and respect their own gender journeys and the journeys of others. We can speak up and out about discriminatory remarks that people make in our circles. And we can teach people how to speak about people who are different with dignity and respect. This is the work we all have the opportunity to do around shared gender liberation. And with that in mind, that shared gender liberation, I want to ask us a different question to kind of see where we're all at with this. If you, as a person in this room, if you do not like the way that trans people are treated in this society, and if you are willing to do something about it, raise your hand. Look around the room. That's a lot of hands up in the air. This is what change looks like, and you are what change looks like. I want to share with you one more tiny story about Lenny Zenith. Remember my first crush? I got to see Lenny perform 30 years later in this small hole-in-the-wall bar in New Orleans. My friend Cherie was there with me. She was the same person that was with me all those years ago. I got to tell you, we acted crazy in front of the stage just like we did all those years ago. And after the show was over, Lenny came up to me, and he thanked me for fighting for his trans community. I had to pinch myself. I mean, here was my first crush, thanking me for making a difference. And then I got to share with him how he is my first crush. He changed my entire world. It was a perfect circle of shared gender liberation that was truly bound up together. Thank you. you.